And remember I told you they offered me another new, they contacted me about new business. So anyway, there's another one. So by this week, I will know whether they're going to allocate it to me. But I feel like next weekend I still want to go to Northampton. So I'm not really sure. I want to go and see, but I really had this debate yesterday with my parents, because even though I've been speaking to the brokers and stuff about this property and, you know, it's kind of looking good, I'm just like, is it like for the money, what I could get in like the Wellingborough site? But I was talking about it at length with my parents yesterday, and I said, look, what would you do? Because it's like house versus location. I feel like that is my dilemma at the moment. And so we talked about it at length, and it was funny. You've seen the space there, now you like it, now you're talking differently. So that's
but the one in Ashford though, it meets your needs, doesn't it?
It's 3 bedrooms.
Yeah. You always wanted a 3-bedroom.
It's 3 bedrooms. It's just, I feel like the downstairs living space is a bit smaller than I would have liked.
Oh, it still comes down to the space.
It's the downstairs living space. But the thing is, it's okay. It's okay. Okay, it doesn't have, like, the upstairs, one of the rooms will be like the study type office. The other one, I'm going to put a guest bed in there that can fold out to a double, so the IKEA, the Hemner's, the day bed. And we have this already in this house, and it's nice. So I'll put that in the guest room, and my mum was insistent that I should get a sofa bed.
I don't mind saying figures now. So at the time when the Lifetime ISA first came, I had about 6,300 in my Help to Buy ISA, because you could put £1,000 in the first month, £1,200 the first month. So when the Lifetime ISA first came, you were able to transfer everything from the Help to Buy into the Lifetime ISA and still contribute the difference for the financial year into your Lifetime ISA. So I transferred everything over, and then I did a difference to top up for the financial year. So that was good for me. What I always tell people is, even if you're not sure you want to buy, just open the Lifetime ISA and put £1 in. Just to get the clock in. And then when you're sure, you can put in the whole money for the financial year. But I'm glad you brought that up, because I think people don't know that you have to hold it for a year. And you really have
and you can still have the Help to Buy and the Lifetime ISA. So these are 2 ISAs that you can hold and still put into, because I still put into my Help to Buy ISA, because also at the time, the reason why I kept putting into it was because I thought, well, if I won't be able to use my Lifetime ISA because it's not been open long enough, at least I can get a bonus on the money that's in my Help to Buy. So you can only use one when you're buying a property. So I thought, well, you know, I'll just use the Help to Buy if I get stuck with this. So I had the option of either, and I had I don't know, I had close to maybe 8,000 or 9,000 in the Help to Buy ISA. So, you know, I would get the bonus on that. The only drawback, and actually then later down the line, I realized that I wouldn't be able to use the Help to Buy ISA, is that both of these products have a cap on the property price, obviously, that you can buy with them. And if you live in London, you live in the southeast, that Help to Buy ISA cap might get you a garage and a parking space somewhere. So when I realised what the cap was, I just thought, it's 250,000.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
That's the cap on their Help to Buy ISA. On the Lifetime ISA, it's 450. But on the Help to Buy ISA, it's 250. 250.
That's it.
That's it.
But
at least with the Help to Buy ISA, you still earn interest at a slightly better rate than like your average savings account, even though most interest anywhere is pretty dire. At least you still get a bit more, and you can draw the money out of that account with no penalty. So you don't have to, you only need to apply to withdraw and close it if you're getting the bonus and you're using it towards a house purchase. But otherwise, you can just treat it like a cash ISA, and if you need to draw money out of it, you can just draw money as you would a normal ISA. So it's worth it for the interest. I mean, I keep it for the interest. I know I won't be using it.
Keep it for the interest as well, but I think now that I've bought a house, maybe I shouldn't hold one. I don't know. I'll check in and I'll close it if I don't need to hold one. But I just keep money in there because it's going to get.
I mean, to be honest, I think you're allowed to have it open. it's basically effectively just treated as a cash ISA. So it'll count, I think it will count towards your annual cash ISA allowance. And obviously you're not building up to a bonus, you'll never get a bonus on it. So you just get standard sort of ISA interest rates. And I think the interest is not bad compared to what is out there. So
it's better. So just to close, and just to clarify, you can no longer open a Help to Buy ISA because it's closed to new applicants now, but you can get a lifetime ISA. But let's talk about your choice deciding between new build or older build and the service charge stuff, because even with a new build development or estate, they still have like estate charges like £250 a month, £120 a month, and it still quite doesn't make sense to me because they use it for street lighting and things like that, but they really don't do anything because you're still paying council tax and stuff. So talk to me through your process, because I know we talked about it before I started the recording, but talk me through your process of deciding between a new build and an older build, and then we'll talk about your location discussion in your head.
To be honest with you, I still look at both, and it wasn't a kind of like, even I remember just yesterday, I feel like my life at the moment is consumed by property searches. I feel like that's all I do. Like I go to bed and I'm just like, let me just check again what else has come up. But it never got to a point where I said, right, I've decided I'm only buying new build. Yeah. It effectively was, what can I get for the money? And it was kind of me seeing, okay, if I was buying an older house and I want 3 bedrooms with a good amount of downstairs space, this is what I'd get for 300,000. If I want to buy a new build, comparatively, for 300,000, I might get 2 bedrooms, but then I might get something that doesn't really need any refurbishment, any work. Effectively, I can move straight in. The only thing I need to buy is like, the furnishings for the house. I don't need to buy any white goods. So for me, it's a constant kind of weighing up, what am I willing, what am I able to do? And even when I've been looking at older houses, I'm looking at houses that somebody else has already done up, so I don't need to do too many things. But I think the thing with older houses, you always have to be aware. When I say older houses, I'm talking maybe like more Victorian, not like your 5 to 10 years recently built type houses. I'm talking like older. But even though something might look like it's been modernized, it's got new kitchens, got new bathroom, it's been decorated, I think the reality is the older a house is, the more the unseen thing. When you're looking at Rightmove, they're not telling you that the whole thing needs rewiring, the electric. And a lot of that stuff you'll only find out when you've done the surveys. And actually, by this point, I guess you're emotionally committed. You spent a good amount of money on legal fees and searches and stuff. And at that point, it's like, oh, do you want to pull out? Do you not? Do you want to go ahead? Do you want to start all over again with another one? And so I have that in the back of my mind. And I think to myself, if I'm buying an older house, I need to be aware of the fact that there may be other costs besides just redecorating, or even if it's decorated, there's likely to still be other costs. And I'm prepared to learn how to paint properly and evenly, and I'm prepared to learn, basic DIY. But if I'm going to spend a lot of money having to do very extensive, do I personally right now have the capacity and the willingness to do that? And so I think that's where I find myself constantly kind of swerving to the side of new build. Now, new builds, I wouldn't say they're the perfect properties to buy. Yes, they need very little refurbishment and perhaps very little work initially. I think obviously a lot of them need to be snagged, and I think it helps to get a snagger just to check all of that. But provided the developers will fix what they need to fix, it is effectively a move straight in and just get your furniture and move in. But I think there's trade-offs to be made. Generally, I think a lot of the bedroom sizes are smaller than perhaps older, Victorian style houses. I think the downstairs living areas can be a bit smaller. And so, it's a compromise. And one of the things, my brother keeps on telling me, every time I'm like, oh, should I get this? And this is a bit closer, this is further over, but it's bigger. And he's just like, listen, there will always be a compromise when you buy a house. Unless you are like multimillionaire, you can buy whatever house you like. You are always going to have to compromise on something. And it's for you to decide what is your point of compromise.
Yeah, that's I like it. That's so good. So even with so when I started looking, I started around 220,000. That's what the house I wanted to buy, like 2017 or 2018. And then I had this Excel sheet where I had the bills of quantity. So I kind of go to the house, look at the work that needs to be done, and I'll kind of do all the sums of what needs to be done. And one of the houses was like, she was willing to sell it to me for, I think, 205 or something like that. It was a nice terraced house, 3-bedroom terraced house, but it was really small. It was built by Bellway, I think 12 years ago, but it looked, she kind of ran it down a lot. And when I did all the bills of quantities of the work that needed doing, it was like 28,000 or so. And you always have to add like 15% to it. Even though I'm a civil engineer, I can do the cost. And I was like, okay, 30,000. I had saved enough to do it, but in my head I was thinking, why would I want to buy that? Like, it's just crazy. So I put the offer in, and then I was like, God, if she accepts this offer, that's it. And she accepted it. There were 3 hours I put it offer in. I was like, she said, that's it. But then I kind of had a cold feet and I pulled out of it and stuff. But then I thought about it and I said, if they come and do this work and it's actually more than 10% extra, I'm dead. Like, I have not got money anywhere else to do this. And I didn't know about going for a loan or anything like that. But with the new build thing as well, I've seen so many horror stories about people who've moved into their new builds and the ceiling has fallen down because of a leak or weird things like that. But like your brother says, there's always a compromise, there's always a fear factor, but it's you doing as much surveys as you can. So I say, do your survey before you instruct your solicitor. So you get your solicitor and say, wait until I do my survey, and then you can negotiate on price and things. In the UK, unfortunately, we haven't got buyer's agents, so you haven't got anyone to help you negotiate on the price. So you're stuck with whatever the agent and their seller do. But it would have been easier if we had someone to negotiate on our behalf. But I think if anyone is buying, do your surveys, find out exactly the problem with the house before you instruct the solicitor and go back to the seller. I think sometimes as well, we kind of feel pressure to buy because we've paid for a survey. But I'm thinking, if I paid for, let's say, £400 for a survey, I'd rather lose £400 than lose like £4,000 later on. So what I did when I planned on buying was I took buyer's insurance, that if anything happens and I have to pull out, that's it. And it's only £60. I'm like, I don't really want to spend £60, but for me, it was safer for me to do that than to do this. Okay, let's talk through your location, because I think you're in a tussle about where to live, where not to live. What is informing your decision? I think it's going to help someone as well. So just talk us through that, please.
So when I started looking, and initially, like if you asked me even like 5 years ago, I wanted to live in the area. So my family lived like in Southeast London, South and Southeast, and a lot of my kind of family friends live in that area. I've grown up in that area. That's what I've always known, and so that's home to me. So I always thought, look, I'm not going to live in London, whether that's by choice or not. Where I want to live is the area closest to where my family live in the southeast part of London, but on the outskirts. So if you just obviously look at a map of London and the home counties, you know that if you live in East London, you're going to Essex. If you live in South East, you're going to Kent. Southwest, you're going to Surrey. North, you're going to Hertfordshire, etc. Like that's the outskirts of London to those various parts of London. And you know, these are areas kind of, I feel like I know over the years that I know, you know, Kent, sort of from Bromley southwards really to Kent, you know, Sevenoaks, Dartford, Orpington, Sidcup, all of those places further south. Didn't particularly want to live in Croydon, although that was an option. So pretty much all of those areas in the southeast. So that was where I started my search. That was what made sense. That was what came naturally to me. That was where I was going to live. But obviously over time, house prices have gone up there. And now what you can get for the money is perhaps a lot less than you could get a few years ago. And, you know, the prices keep going up. And in the time that I've been looking, you know, I remember we had a discussion and I said to you, you know, I'm moving to Dartford, and you were like, well, what can you buy in Dartford? I was just like, you know, for maybe like 300, whatever, I can get like 2-bedroom terraced house. And you were like, 2-bedroom terraced house, is that the only place in the whole country that you can live? And the difficulty for me, actually, I think having that conversation was helpful because I'd never considered living anywhere else other than Kent, North Kent, ideally. But, you know, I was a bit like, oh, I don't want to live in like a old dilapidated 2-bedroom terraced house that's like really tiny, and I've got no space to do anything, and you know, I have to do all this work. And I just looked at these properties and my heart used to sink. I just used to think, but then I just used to think, well, if that's what it is, that's what it is, you know. And then it was when we were talking and you were like, you know, like what about, you know, areas like further north? So think about, you know, Bedfordshire and beyond, and Northamptonshire, and I even had a friend that was thinking about living in Nottinghamshire, so I started looking there, and I was just like, wow, like look at what you can get in all of these places for like the same money or even less. I was like, oh my goodness, like, you know, 4-bedroom semi-detached detached house, like a study, a conservatory, all these things. I was just like, oh my goodness. I was like, you know, and at that point, that was where my point of conflict and actually considering what's my compromise, because it was important to me to kind of live in the southeast, be near the life that I've lived and grown up with, be near my family, be close enough to easily get into London for work. But then on the flip side, I could go a bit further north and be like, well, look at this great house that I could get, and gosh, I'd love it here, and I'd have all the space that I wanted, and I could have exactly the kind of home that, you know, I'd love to have, but it's further away. Is that a compromise I'm prepared to make? And that this, you know, that's the ongoing dilemma for me, is what's more important to me? Is it being closer or having a bigger house, but being happy for that bigger house to be further away?
And if you say being closer, we've talked about this, but I just want you to talk through your thinking so other people can think about it. So your family lives in the north of Kent, which is the southeast, and you, if you ever consider to move into the north, let's say Northamptonshire or anywhere along that side, you'd have to come into London and then drive your way back down to the south. Is that one of the things that's really worrying you? What's your main determining factor? Is it family, or is it proximity to family, or is it just time in getting to family? What is it?
I think it's proximity, and I think it's not having the flexibility or the freedom to, you know, if I was in North Kent, you're talking like 35-40 minutes to Southeast London if I needed to get to my family, or if they needed to get to me. You know, I have nieces, if ever they, and I guess maybe it's not as much planning that you need to kind of do things like that. Like I can just get around. Usually if I want to come into Central, that's a lot easier. And I suppose it's just knowing that, you know, if I go to somewhere like Northamptonshire, you know, I'm there. I mean, that said, you know, it's not Timbuktu, it's not the end of the world. It's like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours on a bad day into London. And I think maybe if my family was stationed in North London, maybe I wouldn't even think twice, because it's just like, well, straight road up north. But sometimes the worst part of travel outside of London is the inside London part of the journey, because, you know, going, let's say I went to see my family in the southeast, it's a good hour plus to get from the southeast to like Finchley and Hendon to then get on the M1 out. And I'm just like, oh, I mean, if I was going to work, I'd probably be going on the train, and, you know, very accessible by train, that's not an issue. I don't know. I think it's just psychologically, actually. I don't even know if it's the distance per se. Like if I was planning to go to London, I'd leave myself 2 hours if I was driving, and I'd know that, look, I know what to expect. When I get to London, there's going to be traffic, and I'll deal with it. But I think it's very psychological for me. I think it's a big move for me. I'm quite close to my family. I think psychologically, it's a big deal to know that, like, out of my close family, I'm the one person that now lives like 60 miles away. And I think it's more psychological than anything. But the reality is, more people are moving to these areas from London. More people are having this exact same dilemma. And I think the communities in these places are being built on these new developments, and even older places. And I think it's not a long time that, you know, before you'll find similar people in your situation who also move there, and, you know, you'll build that community, you'll create that community there. And maybe then I wouldn't even be thinking about London or coming into London or how far I am. But it's just difficult, because I've looked at the properties there and I'm just like, wow, for the same or even less money, I could be living like a king. And what's really important to me, and it's difficult, and I think every person has to decide what's important to them, what is their point of compromise, because there is always a compromise. You cannot usually always get exactly what you want.
So I would totally agree to that. So when I was deciding to finally move to where I've moved now, so I didn't mind Kent, Chatham, Raynham. I really liked Raynham and Kent. I really loved Raynham and Kent, especially the ones around the station. I really liked it. But when I finally moved here, I think I was more concerned what people would say. Oh, why have you moved so far? What do you mean? Blah, blah. And that really affected me, that even on the day that I got my keys, I was so worried. I didn't enjoy the place as much as I thought I would, because I was concerned what people would say. And now I'm thinking, oh, if I have to go to church, I'm just going to go to church twice a week. And I've always been in church every Sunday. And that also kind of put it, like, you can't be where you worship and things. And then recently over the Christmas holidays, I was thinking, God, I'm the only one here. If anything ever happens to me, God forbid, whatever it is, like, there's no one around me. So I actually prayed and I said, bring a community around me. Like, let me form my own community, my own group of friends in this place. That if I ever needed help or anything, there'll be someone close by to help. So I think that's one thing that we have to think about when we're moving to these places. You haven't got family by. So if I ever have to have surgery, I never have one. There's no one close to me to like assist with that. I may have to go to London and live in London, or get a friend or someone here to live with me for a bit before I go. But then you think about it and you think, is it worth the space that I have, that I'm not comfortable where I live? I'm happy where I live. It's safe, it's quiet, it's a little village, it's quiet and things. But then you have to think of, I have been through it, so I'm just sharing my thing, that if you move far away, you think about the fact that you have to form a new community around you. And most people who have lived here would move in with their wives, with their children, or with friends and stuff. So they already have that, but you have just come here, you have to find that. So that's something to think about. Maybe
that's a really good point, actually, because and it is a different consideration for people who are moving with, you know, their fully established family compared to if you're moving on your own. And I think it's actually a very different consideration, and there's probably more to think about, or you think about it a bit differently. Like, if you're somebody, you know, you're moving with your spouse, with your children, you guys are setting up home. In the very worst case, at least you have each other, in that when, you know, you're by yourself, you have to think, am I prepared to kind of literally start over in a place? And kind of, obviously, even as a family, you would want to build community, get to know people and things like that. But I think there's a little bit more, I guess, to think about, I think, if you're moving on your own.
I mean, you definitely have to think about a lot more. So when I moved in, I intentionally made the effort to see my neighbors, like my next door neighbors and the lady down the street, just to, if it's a little Christmas card, just so they know that you are there, they can watch out for you if they need to watch out for you and things. But it's still not the same as moving with a partner or with a husband or with kids. But they will come when they have to come. I think I was talking to you, and I was like, when Abraham was asked to move out, he moved out alone, but he moved out with his family, and he moved from a totally different place, out of what he's known, into a different place. But it's still not easy when you're doing it alone. And yeah, I think people have to think about that when they move. Is it worth moving away, or is it your time to move away to build new communities and new relationships and stuff like that? So which areas are you now looking at, your final areas that you're looking at?
I'm still looking in North Kent, and I'm still looking at Northampton. But this week, for me, I think it's going to be crunch week, because there's a site in Northamptonshire, and there's also a property in North Kent that's also on a new development site, and there is a particular plot that is potentially available to me, and I'll know this week if it's available to me. And I am going to go to Northamptonshire and have a look at the development. This must be the week that I make a decision on this. I feel like, you know, like the Israelites have been round this mountain for too long, and this is the year that I'm going to buy my house and I'm going to move in. And, you know, one of the things I pray is, you know, really to be led to make the right choice, and also to have peace with, you know, the decision that I make. And one of the things that I've really learned is that actually, at the time, there's decisions that you'll make in life that, whether you're not 100% happy, or whether you feel like you've been led, maybe you feel like, you know what, this is the one that God has for you. This is at this time right now. Or maybe, you know, even the job that I'm in now, when I first took this job, I mean, I was grateful to have a job. I'd been made redundant. But when I first started, I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know why I'm here. like, I don't understand anything. And you know, after the first week, I thought I might not even last 2 weeks here. Like, my head is just blown. I don't know what this stuff is all about. I'm so confused. And to think that I've now been in this company 4 years, and to be honest, I've progressed, you know, I think I've progressed quite well, and I have a role that is, I think, quite integral to the business. You could not have told me this 4 years ago. And, you know, the business is a great business, and it really works well for me. And, you know, I feel like the job fits well with my lifestyle. It's a great business. The people are great, all of these things. If I had walked out back there, I could never have seen what was coming for me, and perhaps the reason why I needed to be in, you know, and have this job. And I think it's the same with a lot of big decisions in life, and it would likely be the same with this house. I may not understand, you know, whichever one that I prayerfully consider and choose, I may not understand today, because there's going to be compromise, and I'm not a person that likes compromise. I'll be completely, I like to have exactly what I want in the way that I want it, and exactly 100%. And, you know, the way my life has been is that actually God has never dealt with me like that. There's always been something which I was didn't really like that. And then looking back, I can fully understand why things worked out the way they did. And so I think the point is to get to a place of peace and of confidence and of trust, and just know that, look, you know, really, really trust God with this, and know that, you know, he will cover it and he will bless it. And actually that I will look back in time and, you know, be really thankful that I made the choice that I made, whatever that choice will be.
What would you not compromise on? So you have a list of what you want in your house. What would you not compromise on?
That's a really good question. And to be honest with you, even right now, I feel like the compromise is probably more dictated by what's there and what I can afford rather than my own choices. But even when I was looking at older houses, because a lot of houses in this area, like in Kent generally, they look really nice, and then I see they've got a ground floor bathroom. I would never, ever, ever accept or buy a house that has a ground. I see some lovely house and I think, oh, why didn't I see this before? And I think, oh, I've looked at this house before, like it's really nice. Why did I pass this one by? Then I see the ground floor bathroom and I remember why I passed it. For me, it's a complete no-go. It doesn't matter how fantastic it is, how cheap it is. I am not having a house with a ground, and I'm also not prepared to invest in the money that it would take and the effort and all of that to perhaps relocate the bathroom. I'm not doing it. So for me, that was a complete deal breaker. I think, what else was that? I don't like open plan kitchen and living areas together. I do not like that at all. So for me, I mean, there's some I've looked at and I probably would compromise if it was really, really good in other aspects, but I really don't. I was very adamant on wanting a separate kitchen from a living room. So for me, that was really important. Would I compromise on having 2 bedrooms instead of 3? Because ever since my eyes were open to the possibilities of having 3 bedrooms, I was like, actually, why am I doing this? Why do I want to go back to 2? So now it would be very difficult for me to compromise and accept 2 bedrooms. Very difficult. Bearing in mind, I started this journey probably about 2 years ago saying that I was going to get a 1-bedroom flat. And my family were like, what are you going to do? With all the things that you have, where are you going to go in a 1-bedroom flat? You've got nowhere to move. And actually, it's quite interesting because I've got a friend who bought a 1-bedroom flat a few years ago, and when I saw her a few months ago, she said that she wants to move and sell it and get a 2-bedroom flat. And she said, look, you know, the place is nice, but she said 1 bedroom is just too small, and she's the only one that lives in the flat. So whether I would compromise, I don't think I'd compromise now from 3 bedrooms to 2. I think it's 3. That's it.
So these days, so your 3 must-haves are an upstairs bathroom, a 3-bedroom house, and a closed off, like a separate kitchen diner to the living room. So at least that is set in stone. You're not going to change that. Now the option is to decide between your location and whether it's a new build or an old build. Like, you don't really mind that one, but location is a deciding factor now, and it's going to happen anyway. So it's going to happen. Yeah. Last one before we go, are you planning on using any government scheme like the lifetime? Have you got a lifetime ISA opened? Do you have one? Are you planning on opening one?
So I have got a lifetime ISA. Funnily enough, I left it quite late to open one. Why? Because, you know, the lifetime ISA, you have to have it open for a year before you can actually use it to buy a property. And obviously, as most people know, lifetime ISA, you can only use it to buy a property or for retirement. Otherwise, you incur penalties for taking the money out. So I think at the time when I was thinking about opening it, I was obviously very optimistic about how soon I'd buy a house. And I thought, well, there's no point me opening it now and putting the max money in, because I will pay the penalty, because I'm sure I'm going to buy a house sooner than 1 year. So actually, I'm not going to open it. And then I think it was after last December when I got a reality check about what I could afford to buy and what was out there. And I thought, clearly, I'm not really at the point yet. So I said, let me open the lifetime ISA. But at the time, I was really nervous, because I thought, if I need... Obviously, I want to get the max bonus for the year. I could afford to put in the 4,000 because I already had savings. I just moved it from existing savings into the lifetime ISA. But I thought, what if I do find somewhere before a year, and now this money is locked up in the lifetime ISA? I can't get it out without paying the penalty. And then if I pay the penalty, then I'm just losing money. So I was just a bit like, oh. I said, anyway, let me just put it in, and maybe let me just pray that all things work together, and maybe, you know, having that in the background, knowing that I've got at least a year to find somewhere before I even have to think about paying deposit. I said, let me just do it. And I'm so glad that I did, because now obviously I've put in 2 years worth. So I opened it last January. I put in the max amount then before the end of that tax year. So obviously I got the 1,000 bonus. And then what I was going to do was to put, well, in any case, in this tax year, I've also put in the maximum. So I'll get the bonus on that. And the reality is, I'm not going to be drawing on that to close that to pay deposit this month. So I've got my 1 year. I can take the money out for a house purchase without penalty, which is really good. So I think it's worth having. And then obviously once I've done that, I would need to think about sort of to repurpose that then for retirement, and think about what I start putting away in that to get some bonus for retirement. So I think it's a good product. I don't think it's one of the ones that people should be wary of. It's not like, you know, Help to Buy. It's not like shared ownership where you feel like there's a lot of, you know, terms and conditions to look into. I think it's a very straightforward product. I think it makes sense if you're still within the age sort of eligibility to get one if you can. But obviously you just think about when you're likely to buy a house, because there will be a penalty for, you know, you won't just lose the bonus, you will lose more than the bonus. So, but yeah, I think that's a good product. I did also have the Help to Buy ISA before. Actually, I still have that. Before the lifetime ISA came out, I had the Help to Buy. That I found it a really frustrating product, because you can put away £200 a month into the Help to Buy ISA. And I just think, you know, £200 a month, you're going nowhere fast with that. It's not enough to put in. And then to top it up,
I did a Help to Buy ISA, and I think, and before we end, is there any last thing you want to talk to anyone about your journey so far, especially about your decision-making process?
Maybe I'll have to come back and update.
Yeah, I think we'll get you back.
Maybe when I'm in the house, I'll come back and finish off the story.
Oh, wait, before you do that, so you end up buying a new build property, and you know that it takes a while for it to be complete. For something like 6 months from the time that you reserve and everything. Do you see that as a positive thing or a negative thing, knowing that you have to wait for a bit?
To be honest, I think it depends. But for me, it's something I'm very comfortable with. Because I'm not in a hurry. I've got other reasons at the moment which I may not even physically be in a position to move before the end of March, possibly early April. So, and the property that I was looking at in Kent, you know, they've said that it's going to be ready in March. I went to the site the other day, I drove around, I called the lady, I said, this property is not going to be ready in March because it's not even up yet. There's nothing there. But she assures me that a lot can happen in 3 months. But I said, look, I don't even mind at all. If it's June, I actually don't mind, but I'd just like to have a good idea so that at least I can plan towards it. I think it depends on your circumstances. Maybe for somebody that's paying rent somewhere and they're just like, you know, I don't want to have to keep paying this much rent. I'd like to now just move in and start then it might be different for them. Maybe if you've got kids that you want to start in school because it's coming up to school year and you don't want to have to start them in a school and then move them because now the house is ready. I think it's different. And the problem is, even though they give you these estimates, I think 9 times out of 10, you need to add 2 months at least onto this, because I think they're really ready on time. So for me, it's great. It means I've got more time to save money, to put into the fund for the furniture and all that other stuff. More time to plan, more time to, you know, to really think and plan and save and all of that and get prepared. So I have no issues with that at all. It's nice knowing that you've got something, but actually it's not just that the pressure is on you to get it moving. Actually, you're at the mercy of somebody else. So actually there isn't much that even you can do. So I think I see it as it's quite a gift to me, to be honest, to have that time to plan ahead. But I know it might not be the same for everyone.
That's very, very, very good. Very good. So last thoughts for people who are
last thoughts. I think be flexible. Be flexible. You have to compromise at some place. Property prices are going up. I think everybody's waiting for this huge crash of the market. And you know, it hasn't happened, and I don't want that to happen, you know, to people, even if it means that you might be able to get a house at a lower price. But I think be flexible. I think, you know, I don't know if the government intervention with the stamp duty and all of that was really helpful, because I think that just served to inflate prices even more. And you know, people know that they can sell their homes for ridiculous amounts, and there's always a bidding war. I think the other thing that I didn't mention to be mindful of on older properties is that, and it doesn't really happen on new builds because usually the price is relatively fixed, and if anything you might be able to get a reduction, but this bidding war on properties, and it's like, you know, a few years ago, even like a year ago or two, you could offer asking price on a property and it'd be accepted. Now it's like people are going 20, 30k over the asking price. And if you're trying to work to a budget of this is what I can afford, you see a property, then you get into it and they're like, yeah, they won't really accept that offer, you know, can you give us best and final offers? And it's like, well, it was on for 350, I can do 350. And they're just like, yeah, well, they really want 375. And you're just like, if you can't, so effectively then what you have to do is look at 300 or 325 to give yourself room to offer over asking price. And maybe what's on the market for 300 or 325 doesn't meet your specification. So I think that's an added complication to the market now that actually didn't exist a while back, because there wasn't this horrendous bidding war on every single house going. So actually I think that's something to really think about as well. But yeah, look, I'd say be flexible. I think be realistic, start somewhere. Everybody has to start somewhere, and I think it's probably better to get something, and then, you know, it's not forever. It's not like, you know, a life or death type decision. Houses, people sell, they move, they buy other houses. It's not forever. You know, start somewhere, be flexible, be realistic, you know, save money. I think one of the really annoying things in this generation is when, you know, you get people from generations past and they say stuff like, well, you know, if you didn't drink coffee, you didn't have avocado toast, then you'd be able to afford a house. It's like, look, houses now are, you know, probably about 10 times what they were like in the 70s or whatever, you know, when you could probably, you know, buy a whole street if you were buying them at the price at that time. So it's just like those kind of comments, I feel like they're a bit unhelpful. And as I said, I think people have to live, but look at where you can cut back in your own life. I think it's a lot of how much do you want it. Years ago, maybe I didn't want it that much. Maybe I just thought like some knight in shining armor was going to come and give me a house, and now, you know, reality has dawned. And he's still going to come, but now it's like I want this now sooner. And so I'm going to do what it takes to. But look, it's tough out there, and I'm very sympathetic with everybody that's going through this, and it's hard. And look, you know, kudos to everybody who's making it happen, and let's just hope we, you know, we'll get our dream homes soon. We'll
bring her back to tell her story about how she finally decided, and hopefully she won't have a lot of regrets. And I know she will not have a lot of regrets.
I will not have any regrets.
We'll be holding her hand through it. We'll be holding her hand through it and making sure she's not making a rash decision at all, because we don't want her to make a rash decision. But thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.
On the back. Thank you very much, Yetunde. Bye.
Bye.